back to GM. Biggest story of the day easily. Many say that the American automakers are too big to fail, many in the government inside the Beltway. But our next guest says if we're really being honest with ourselves, the auto industry already has failed. So how do we pick up the pieces, and can we ever put this manufacturing giant together again? Joining us now is Peter Kaufman, president of the Gordian Group. He's a restructuring expert here, and you have restructured many companies, or at least helped them either go into bankruptcy, come out of it. GM, going bankrupt, is that what you're going to say?
Well, I have a dark horse prediction that at the 11th hour they'll cut some deal with the bondholders, but I still believe that because of lots of exogenous issues, they're going to have to implement whatever deal they do in Chapter 11. The issue to me isn't is it going to file for Chapter 11 or not? Is it going to file on a consensual basis or unconsensual basis?
Now, here's my question about the bondholders. You believe there's still a chance to eke out a win here at the 11th hour?
I think the bondholders are economic creatures. They're led by economic creatures, and they're going to weigh their alternatives. Right now, it's been very easy for them to say, give a resounding no to what the government offered because it offered them, A, so little, and B, such disparate treatment from a similarly situated creditor, unsecured creditor, the unions. The unions are faring so much better than the bondholders in the deals that are on the table.
Okay, but you say that the U.S. auto industry has effectively failed already. What could be done in Peter Kaufman vision that could put these pieces back together and create another manufacturing base in the U.S., if ever again?
Well, General Motors is a failed business. It's a failed business model. There are lots of reasons for that. You've got to look at all the reasons. A management that wasn't visionary, bloated labor costs, these huge legacy health and pension costs, all well-intended, a tremendous labor force, but they weren't making cars that people really wanted to buy, and they weren't doing it at a profit. At its core, that's what this is all about. So is there a chance that if we, as a country, spend 50, 75, $100 billion redistributing wealth from taxpayers to support and prop up a new General Motors, that they might make a go of it? Maybe. I'm not sure I'd bet that way.
If they brought you in and they said, Mr. Kaufman, here's what we have, and they laid everything in front of you, what would you say to them about creating a company once again that could actually function and make money?
You've got some real simple building blocks. Who's your management? I don't know who the management's going to be. What's your business plan? I don't know what the business plan is going to be. What's your capital structure? Well, they are trying to pare their debt down dramatically, and that's critical. And what kind of cars are you going to build? How do you be competitive? Just because they're large doesn't mean that they can get away with being uncompetitive.
Would you say that they've taken some decent steps? They're selling off certain brands. They're getting rid of Saab. They're getting, they're dealing with the Opel situation. As you bring in Chrysler to all of this too as well, and you look at what's going on there. But who's doing what right? And if you could say anything to the Obama administration about making this whole again, what would it be?
Well, first of all, General Motors has gotten a lot of the benefits of Chapter 11 already. They've cut costs. They've cut plants. They're selling. They're doing all sorts of things that you could otherwise do in Chapter 11.
So those are good things. You say that they've done some good things.
Those are good things. There are two, you and I have talked about this before, there are two core concepts to have a successful restructuring that have been ignored by this administration today. Number one, you don't put in new money unless it's part of an overall solution. Here we've poured billions in.
Before they came up with solutions.
Right. And number two, there has to be an equitable sharing of the pain amongst the constituencies. Right now, the bondholders are bearing the huge brunt of the pain relative to the other constituents.
But listen, the Wall Street Journal reporting today that now it looks like the UAW are not going to get that sweetheart deal. It's not going to be 40% that they're going to get. It's more like 17 to 20%. You're telling me that doesn't hurt them enough?
Let's talk about what the union's getting. According to the reports I've seen, they're getting, for their $35 billion unsecured claim, they're getting $10 billion of already set-aside assets. They're getting a note. They're getting cash. And they're getting a preferred piece of paper, all of which total up to a monstrous recovery relative to the bonds. So their preferred stock comes ahead of the shares that they're getting. So it isn't that they just went from 39% to 17.5%. They got some benefits on top of that to go down to the shares.
As we finish up, you and I have talked specifically about this, and you use this hand motion. You don't dangle the money and drop it in their hands. until they restructure properly, and then you give it to them. Was that the #1 mistake this administration made? Because they would argue we had to do it just to keep the heart pumping.
I believe that this administration continued the bad policy started under the Treasury Department under the Bush administration, which is you don't give money to a troubled situation unless it's in concert with all of the problems being solved.
Peter Kaufman of the Gordian Group, the restructuring and distressed asset expert. We always bring him on for this. Story's not ending. You'll be back here again. We'll set up a futon for you back in the green room since you'll be here that much. Thank you very much, Peter. The closing bell ringing in 11 minutes, just 9 days until the big reveal. Austin, what are you doing? Do not walk away from me when I need you.
Working.
Yeah, complaining.